Okay, so I have spent about the last week going down a rabbit hole so deep that I genuinely don't know how to get back out. I want to share everything I found because there are things happening right now as we speak that there aren't a lot of people talking about. So today we are going to talk about the land, the lawsuits, and what happened when they tried to put this thing to a vote. Let's go. I'm not going to be going over everything from the very beginning, okay? So if you aren't caught up, you just need to go watch my other videos. And today we're moving on, we're moving forward, because we have a lot to talk about. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the land itself, because when I saw this document, I saw an opportunity, okay? So I went and I pulled every piece of property that's on the document. Let me tell you who owns this land, because we have a couple of key players, it seems. The biggest name that kept coming up when I was searching the parcels is Bar H Ranch and Bar H Land. So when I did a little bit further digging, they're of course both owned by the same person, Mr. Shane Holmgren. Now, back in December of 2004, Mr. Holmgren consolidated a bunch of these exact land parcels here on the same day. He moved them around between his various LLCs. There's another LLC that they own called Holmgren Land and Livestock Company. That company was also one of the ones that helped consolidate these parcels of land back in 2004. Might not be extremely relevant to what's going on here, but there is a massive footprint on this land. And Mr. Holmgren has never really been named publicly. We don't know if he's sold the land, don't know if he's agreed to sell, or what he was offered. We genuinely have no idea, okay? What I do know, and this is where it gets a little bit juicy, there was a rumor going around on Reddit, on the internet, that Mr. Shane Holmgren had some connections. Some people on the internet had presumably looked up the last name Holmgren and found a couple of different Holmgrens. This is where I genuinely could not get out of this rabbit hole. I went so deep that my friend said I need to see a therapist. Okay? Yeah, she's lovely. Her name is Katie. Anyway, when I went on Reddit and I saw that people had searched up Holmgren, they were talking about a Richard and a Jared Holmgren. And both of those people are on both the Bear River City Council, and they're also on the board for the Acme Water Utility Company. Seems a little suspicious, considering that Shane Holmgren was the one who applied for the water rights application for Project Stratos, right? I had to know. I had to know if they were brothers. I had to know what kind of connection they had. This right here is a Holmgren family tree, and it goes back about 5 generations, as you can see. And I created it based solely off of Facebook posts and obituaries. By the way, you would be surprised how many people on Facebook will say the exact name and their relationship to somebody else in a comment. They'll be like, I love my dad, Shane Holmgren. It's like, thank you for that. Like, made it so easy for me. Anyway, I know this is insane, but it helps. Because here we can see that Jared and Richard are first cousins. So they both sit on Bear River City Council and the Acme Water Board together. They are first cousins on the boards together. However, Shane Holmgren is all the way over here. So his connection to the two is that he is a second cousin. His dad and then Jared and Richard's dad, they're cousins. Jared and Richard are siblings, right? They are first cousins, their parents are siblings. Those siblings are first cousins to Shane's dad. Are we kind of seeing the tree? Just look at the visual aid, please. I'm sorry, I'm bad at explaining. So those three, they don't go all the way back up until 3 generations up. A man named John Peter Holmgren. Now, something I want to point out, though, is that while this may not seem like a very close connection, you know, I know one of my second cousins, and I don't really talk to her as much in my adulthood. What I did find doing all of this research is that the farming goes all the way back, if not further, to Mr. John Peter Holmgren, all the way at the top. This family is like the family up there in Box Elder County. They've been farming in that area for generations. They're a very well-established name in the community. I get the idea that it's the kind of family that they all kind of stick close by, they're all very close-knit. In fact, the family farm home is actually now a historical landmark. You can look it up, for real. Honestly, it makes it a lot more interesting to me that after generations of farming, Shane Holmgren is now giving up part of his land over to a data center. It just seems a little bit interesting, and my only question is, what is the motive? Because, in my opinion, there had to be a motive. A motive so big that he, in my opinion, kind of turned his back on his family and sold the land. I don't know if that's how the family sees it, but I do know that Richard's son, Riker, has actually spoken out against the data center. I'll put a post here. I don't want you all to go find him. However, I just want to make it clear that it does seem like there might be some family conflicts here. He has posted multiple times about the Great Salt Lake, the importance of the Great Salt Lake not drying up, the drought, and then he also, a very long post about the data center itself, speaking out against it, largely due to the water and the Great Salt Lake. I do also want to note something. I'm kind of pinballing here, but I do also just want to note that in my research, and this might mean nothing, but it seems that almost everybody in the Holmgren family that I was researching on Facebook and everywhere else, it seemed like they were all a lot more public, you know, using social media like normal people, commenting on each other's posts, adding friends and family members. The Shane Holmgren family, though, had a lot less information out, and that could very well be just somebody that doesn't like social media, doesn't post a whole lot. There are a ton of people who are like that, and that's fine. But I wouldn't be surprised if a family doing this, especially if they have family opposition to the decision that they're making to sell their land, I wouldn't be surprised if they would go quiet or dark or private on social media. We can move on now from the Holmgren family, but that didn't feel very relevant to me just because I want to know who's involved and I want to know what the incentives are, just in case there's anything shady going on. It's possible that second cousins of a very close-knit family could push things through, have some sway within the county. We have no evidence of that. So everything I'm saying is just speculation. Jared and Richard may have pulled a couple of strings for their second cousin Shane, or they really oppose what Shane is doing. I don't know. Over here on my channel, we like to think for ourselves, so that's just what I found on that family, and you can come to your own conclusion. Okay. We're gonna move on to the Munns family. They are the second major family that I found while researching the land, and they are also pretty interesting to me. Tim Munns is part of this family, and unfortunately, I don't have a family tree, I'm so sorry, but I can tell you preliminary information about what I know. Tim Munns is part of this family. He owns a couple of LLCs, and on January 1st, 2025, he transferred about 5 parcels of land, over 1,600 acres, mind you, from his company Flying M Enterprises, LLC. And he transferred them into the Munns Living Trust. Basically internal restructuring. So for whatever reason, Tim Munns wanted to transfer his land assets between family members or between different LLCs, entities that you control. The thing is, January 1st, 2025, that's pretty recent. It's very, very likely that Project Stratos was in its very, very early planning days at that time. So again, I'm just speculating. We have no evidence that the timing is anything fishy at all, but it's just worth noting that two things may or may not be connected. And then there's Bud Munns, possibly Tim's son, who personally purchased 320 acres in October of 2025 from a company called Hunsaker and Welling, LLC. What I do know about Bud Munns is that he's 41 years old, He just graduated from UVU in aviation. He just won a Cessna airplane on June 6th, and he now owns 320 acres inside of Project Stratos. That's just a detail. I'm just telling you what I know. And then there are the outliers. And there's quite a bit of outliers. There are 2 Idaho LLCs that now have a footprint here, which isn't a red flag to me. The project area sits right underneath the Idaho-Utah border, so it makes sense that somebody like across the border would likely own land in Utah inside the project area. But one of those LLCs, specifically 77 Neal Ranch, was only formed in October of 2024. So a brand new Idaho LLC owning 640 acres inside the project area formed right as this whole thing was taking shape. I have questions. I don't have answers yet, but I have questions. So that's what we have so far as the land goes. Now let's talk about what people are trying to do to stop this whole project. So an organization called Alliance for a Better Utah, along with 5 anonymous Box Elder County residents, filed a lawsuit against MIDA. In addition to naming MIDA, they also individually named J. Stewart Adams, the MIDA chair, Jerry Stevenson, another board member on MIDA, and Box Elder County as a whole. Their umbrella argument is that MIDA is acting in an unconstitutional way, and that MIDA itself is unconstitutional. But they're also arguing that citizens' rights have been waived throughout this entire project. It's moving forward without the consent of the people that it's actively affecting. I did go through the legal filing itself. Some of the points that they made were that the project area plan strips Box Elder County residents of the constitutional right to challenge the initiatives. The county's consent to MIDA is irrevocable, meaning that it will permanently cut off citizens' access to vote on the project ever. Democracy is completely out the window. They are arguing, and this is why they brought in both J. Stewart Adams and Jerry Stevenson, because both of them sit on the MIDA board and also have seats within the Utah State Legislature. And that actively violates Utah's prohibition on legislators holding more than one office. The Stratos plan failed to meet even MIDA's own regulations. In the public meeting where they internally voted on the project, they didn't have sufficient evidence to support findings on feasibility and public health that's required in MIDA's own statutes. They also never showed any proof that the landowners actually did consent to the project. It is said that the landowners consented. The commissioners have also insinuated that their own consent was actually coerced or reported involuntarily, which would make it completely invalid. And the plan itself was too vague to satisfy, again, their own evidentiary requirements. And lastly, there have been some very shady financial practices that have happened ever since the vote. Shortly after J. Stewart Adams, along with the rest of MIDA, voted on the project, Adams received $135,000 from MIDA-related businesses. That happened 7 days later. Now again, I don't have any evidence that there was some kind of agreement, approve the project and we'll pay you. I don't have any evidence of that. However, that timing is highly suspicious. So suspicious that Alliance for a Better Utah even put it in their lawsuit. So, J. Stewart Adams is starting to look more and more suspicious. He is a named defendant in a lawsuit, while MIDA money flows directly into his campaign account. I'm not going to tell you what to think. You're smart, you can do your own math. But that might not have been the only pressure that was put on people to vote yes for the project. Commissioner Perry, one of the 3 commissioners who voted yes, he actually, the day after they voted on May 4th, the next day, he said that he had never felt so threatened in his life. He had police officers outside of his house, he was getting death threats, but he also said that before they voted, he received a call from a representative named Scott Sandall. He called Perry and he expressed his support for the project. Apparently he owns land right near there, so I want to know who else received a call, and from who. Because all three commissioners were saying that they felt a lot of pressure from the state. Direct quote. In fact, they said, the state came to us and said, this has got to be done. The state. I wonder who that could be. So the second avenue that people have tried in order to shut this whole thing down was a referendum. An organization called BEL, which is Box Elder Accountability Referendum, they filed 2 referendum applications on May 11th. Now again, that's just 1 week after the commissioners approved the project. So they wanted to put both resolutions actually on the ballot for the public to vote on. They wanted the people of Box Elder County to actually vote on this. What a concept. However, they gave it their review and the county attorney rejected the applications. His reasoning being that the resolutions were actually administrative actions and not new laws that need to be voted on. So, they pushed back. They cited Baker versus Carlson, a 2018 Utah Supreme Court ruling that said that major land development decisions are legislative acts, and as such, they need to be voted on when they have a long-term public impact, and if a 40,000 acre, 30-year, irrevocable land transfer to a private millionaire's data center doesn't fit the bill, I genuinely don't know what does. So, BEL has appealed, and we are waiting to see what happens. Here's the other thing. Box Elder County's official response to the referendum applications was this, that even if the referendum passes, it won't stop the project. It just voids the county's negotiated protections. So they're essentially saying that voting against this project could actually make things worse for you because the public won't actually have power to stop the project. They will just have power to remove Box Elder County's attempt at putting regulations in place. County negotiated concessions and conditions, and if we void those, then the project will potentially move forward anyway, but now without any of the guardrails. Now you know already what I think about the contract, because there are no consequences for if they violate the contract anyway, but I do agree that having an attempt at guardrails is better than no attempt. But I also want you to notice what it implies. It implies that there is no mechanism, none, by which the people of Box Elder County can actually stop this. You can't sue to stop it. You can't vote to stop it. You can try and slow it down, you can try and add regulations. According to the county's own statement, even a successful referendum won't even do that. So what do? I think that Alliance for a Better Utah is doing a good job. They have a lot of claims, hopefully they have a lot of evidence, and if we can take a harder, closer look at MINA itself, and whether or not they themselves are unconstitutional, and furthermore, the way that they are acting, if that's unconstitutional, that might be our only hope. Even then, O'Leary is likely to find another partner. They're gonna find a way around it. And if they can't, they'll go into a different state, and they'll do the same thing. It goes all the way to the top. We have to find a way to put federal regulations in place for data centers. I don't see a lot of hope there, but we've got 2 more years, guys. We'll get through it, I promise. So here's where we are. Now, based on public backlash, which, again, I'm a little bit confused as to why they even care, but based on public backlash, J. Stewart Adams did send a letter to Kevin O'Leary telling him that he has to reduce the size of the data center by 75%. It does seem like a win. Kevin O'Leary's response was that he was shocked. He thought that it was a typo, thought that they might see 25% of a reduction, but 75% seemed insane to him. But they had literally already reduced the amount of land from 40,000 to 10,000 acres right before J. Stewart Adams sent the letter. So in reality, it was all just public show. Kevin O'Leary was not shocked. This was always the play. I think that it's kind of like when you use the psychology trick to tell somebody one thing that seems really extreme, when in reality the thing that you want is less extreme, right? Like if you're in sales, you tell somebody you have a $10,000 product so that they are all shocked by that. So that then when you sneak in the $1,000 product, it seems like a steal, right? I think that the same tactic is being used here. They already knew they were only going to use 10,000 acres of the land that they had. That's why Kevin O'Leary was out here saying, we're not going to use all of the land that we have. So then, after all of the public outrage, they could reduce it drastically, by 75%. And then maybe everybody would get off their backs, right? Well, not here, because here we think for ourselves. And we can see that that's actually all a show. It's all a front. All of this is theater. This is not real life. These people have it down to a science. They think that we're stupid. So, they are not moving forward with 40,000 acres. They are moving forward with 10,000. But they are still moving forward with the data center. The lawsuit is still pending. It will be for a long time. The referendum is still being appealed. It likely won't even change anything. And we have no idea if the landowners have actually consented to this. If you have done any of your own research, if you know anything more about the Stratos project or the landowners, please reach out. My email is in the description box. We may move on to different ideas and different investigations in the upcoming videos, but I'm fully committed to continue investigating, keep researching, and keep reporting on the things that come out as it happens. Give me any and all of your threads that you want me to pull on, and I promise you, if it's out there, I will find it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.